Hey guys! So today you and I are going to talk about getting rejected. So let's get into it. So the question in question was, hi Frederick, have you ever seen a software engineer get rejected in an interview due to a single random statement that they made? No, not just, something random that a person says. I have the usual thing that gets someone dismissed has more to do with it depends a little bit on how you look at randomness, because usually when people do an evaluation of a software developer, it's down to two things basically. One is the person's general attitude, and the other one is their technical understanding and sort of how they communicate about, well, basically about their tech skills and sort of their experiences working in technology. And so this is the stuff that where you can get these sort of random snippets of information about a person based on their experiences. So usually the software developers who do really well are the software developers who understand, sort of like, they have the technical knowledge so that they make the interviewer feel comfortable with the fact that they sort of know the tools, they know the lingo, they know how to do things, and sort of they have common experiences that the interviewers usually hear. That's the one thing. The other thing is that they have a general attitude which sort of indicates that they have an interest in their field. They have a collaborative mindset. These sorts of good things that means that they're going to work well in a team, for example, and communicate well. The opposite that happens sometimes with this is where you deal with someone who has a bad attitude, as I was saying, or maybe they actually lack those technical skills, which is, they can sort of go in tandem. And I've been in many of these sorts of situations, guys, and it's sort of sometimes it can become really painful, where you'll talk to a candidate who maybe is fairly weak technology-wise, or like they don't really know so much, or they think they do. It is a classic problem. Like, you think that you know uh, your industry, but the reality is that you're actually pretty much out of touch with most of mainstream programming. It's very common, guys, that I talk to software developers who sort of like, on their CV they've done like 100 things, and I would go as far as to say that I can almost immediately figure out if they have quality experience, or if they've been working at these sort of low-end projects, or like these sort of random ad hoc things where like nothing they have done really has prepared them for doing things in larger IT companies, or what we call mainstream programming, the sort of stuff that they do at Google or my company, or like Facebook, etc., etc., where like this is sort of the peak of what you expect from like the average software developer. And so when that happens, some of them, like usually the people who are humble, they sort of collapse under that. Like usually, like they get very, you can clearly hear, like you try to be nice, you try to sort of help and so forth, but they keep getting things wrong, or they don't actually know how to answer questions and things like that. And so it, of course, it makes them tense up. Some people, on the other hand, in this situation, what they do is they get defensive or arrogant and things like that. And usually I get along pretty well with the people who sort of who just admit to me that they might not know certain things, for example. And I've actually said to many people that I've talked to, like, no one knows all of this stuff, and so if you don't know stuff, don't try to pretend that you do, because I do. Because I'm the interviewer. I've done this interview 100 times. Of course I know the answer to most of these sorts of questions. So if you try, you're not going to trick me into believing you, because, well, at least in my company, they have actual software developers and like experienced people doing the interview. You might be able to swing that if you're like at this random company who doesn't actually know the answer to the questions, or like maybe so forth and so forth, and that can happen. But getting a bad attitude in that situation, it's like the kiss of death to everything for you guys, because a person who has enough of the answers right, but has the grace and the humility to just sort of be transparent and say, I'm sorry, I don't really know this thing, has a much bigger chance of actually getting the job, even if they didn't get everything correct, than the person who gets angry and defensive about it, or who pretends like and gets like this. It's so painful. Like for me, I just sit there and I go, all right, and we can sort of just skim through most of this stuff, because it's clear that they don't actually know all that much, and it's also clear that they're gonna cause problems over the fact that if they don't feel comfortable, or if they don't get to do the thing that they want, it's going to cause a problem. And guys, I've worked with people like that. They get fired very quickly as well, at least when I am involved, because the fundamental problem is, guys, if you start believing that you are all that, and you start believing that you have this way you do things, and then that's the way it goes, you're sort of you're setting yourself up for something really, really bad. Because the reality is that even if you are all that, that doesn't necessarily matter if your manager doesn't agree with your way of doing things. And if you can't adapt in that situation, it becomes a very big problem. And in some cases, a classic one that I have is when I deal with software developers who have, this is like the number one case I usually have with friction, in terms of friction, which is that the vast majority of software developers suck at, say, unit testing. And most of them are sort of convinced, a lot of them have been working for companies where they don't actually care about that, and then it becomes my job to sort of fix quality. And one of the fundamental building blocks that I need from the software developers when it comes to erasing quality overall in a product is to have them understand that testing is a part of that process. They don't have to test everything, but they have to sort of know it. And the people who sort of dig in their heels, and I have this so many times, guys, I've had lengthy conversations with software developers who've been working for years and years and years, but the reality is that they've never actually evolved that part of themselves. And now they start fighting me on this, who has been doing this. That means that I can't teach them. I can't get a dialogue because they're too good. They perceive themselves to be too good to receive help or something like that. These are the sorts of things. Comments like that, comments like indicates that you're not going to take advice from someone who's better at something than you are, because you already believe that you're done, or like that you have this weird ego thing going and so forth and so forth. This is it's a no-go. And like these sort of like when you converse with people, this is what I see people get dismissed on. If you don't know your stuff, it really comes down to like how much do you know versus what is the role that people are looking for. And you can be forgiven for not knowing everything. That's fine. But it's very difficult to say, yeah, we should hire this person who doesn't, even if you do know everything, who has this attitude problem, or has this idea that, no, actually, I'm the one who's going to run the show, when you're hiring them to say, like if they're not going to collaborate, or like they're kind of just going to be there and everybody else has to adapt to them. That is the sort of individual that very rarely makes it through. And you can find many comments, like it's never just one or two, just like one comment, but you can very clearly hear where like they ask about things that sort of indicate that, okay, this person doesn't really care about coding, they care about management, or like doing things like that. Like I've seen developers who sort of have applied for a software developer's role, and the only questions they ever asked about anything was everything related to management, and everything related to and I mean not manager, how management works, like their way that they can interact with management and so forth. Because they sort of, it's like, the best way to describe it is that it was like a manager for a company came in and didn't understand that we were looking for a software developer, not someone. We needed someone who wrote code, not someone who could like administrate the team or anything like that. That's the sort of comments that sort of indicates that, yeah, this is not a good fit. So what I want you to take away from this is that I've never seen anybody, because like, guys, I know for some of you have a bad experiences with interviewers, and I mean, I'm not going to say that I've never had bad interviews. I've had many of them, but I've also done quite a few interviews on both sides of the spectrum, and you have to sort of understand that on average, if you're dealing with a sensible hiring process, so like sensible people, it's not going to be like you said one thing and then it's over. I mean, it's usually the case that they are looking for something. It is subjective, it is unfair, it's all of these things. I completely agree, and I have sort of learned to accept that. Just as an actor has to understand that you can't be the right person for every role, just that's the same way for you. You have to accept that you're not going to impress everybody or something like that, and you sort of have to be humble in front of that. I will argue to you. And the thing that usually gets you is that combination, that you don't actually have a good way of communicating that you know your stuff. If you just never really know how to reply to things, or how to explain things, or talk about your tooling or your craft or anything like that, or if you have an issue with your attitude. In other words, for example, if you don't know something, your attitude is that, yeah, I don't care that I don't know this thing, or instead of, for example, saying that, yeah, I'm going to go and learn about that sort of stuff. Or if you have an attitude problem where you think that you're already all that or something like that, these are the sort of warning comments that can happen through a conversation, that like you're basically gone immediately. Because what the companies are looking for is ideally a person who knows everything, nobody knows everything, and a person who will share and collaborate and adjust based on the requirements of the group that they find themselves in. This is the person that they're looking for, and things that you say that indicates that you're not going to be that person, you're not going to adjust to your coworkers, you're not going to help them, or you don't really know all that much, etc., etc. Like, these are the things that are dangerous. Have a great day.